Welcome everyone back to District Dialogue, a podcast focused on highlighting the voices shaping the future of education. I'm your host, Julian Fitzgerald, Executive Director of the Community Foundation. Today I'm joined by Kenny Bouwens, who is the CTE STEM Director and Innovation Director of Louisa County Schools in Virginia. Kenny, how are you today?
I'm doing well, sir, and glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Glad to hear you're doing well. Very excited for this conversation. Just recently in our prep convo, you mentioned a few things. And we'll jump right into that in a bit. But I'd love to get a little bit of background as it relates to what really introduced you to education. What were some of those earlier motivations that you recognized that propelled you to being an educator to start with?
Sure, yeah. So I'd go back to my childhood. I grew up in kind of a tough area economically. There wasn't a lot of opportunity, and my mom, worked for a plastics company on the line packing bags and worked her way up to the offices. And my dad is an excavator by trade and was really a do-it-yourself kind of guy. So
Hmm.
everything that we ever want to do at home, we didn't hire roofers, we did it ourselves. We didn't get a plumber, we did it ourselves. We dug our own basement under our house, right? So that hands-on
Wow.
motivation of just getting it done. My dad's kind of a workaholic, but my dad always told me the trades aren't the best thing sometimes. Like it beats your body up, and you should go to college. And honestly, too, a little background about myself. I didn't share this with you before, but I'm actually legally blind. So a lot of those
Oh.
trades for me, can you do a lot of things with a disability? Sure, but can you do them as well as the other people? Maybe not. So you have to kind of think about what's realistic for me. And at the time, I wasn't
Mhm.
driving either. I do have a license now, that thanks to some adaptable equipment. But um, so it was kind of like teaching might be a good pathway. I can go to school every day, go to the same place, be hands on, do the things I love, and help spread that knowledge. Because one of the things about my dad, I love him to death, and he's still this way to this day. He's a terrible teacher. So he'd take the tool out of your hand and do it himself because he could do it faster, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
well, and I literally,
Yeah.
like 3 weeks ago, he was trying to show me how to do something, and I told him, I said, if you don't let me do it, I'm never going to learn. Like he's still that way. Um, but so for me, it was kind of like, hey, I enjoyed all my CTE classes at school because I could see the things my dad was doing and then actually learn how to do it. Because my dad was kind of like
Yeah.
a just watch, be quiet, and you'll learn it. But I'm not. I
Yeah.
need to pick it up and try it. So taking all these classes in high
Mhm.
school was like that was what the enjoyment. And I was a pretty good student. I mean, I got B's and A's. So but getting into those classes and being able to try welding, I watched my dad weld so many times, and then be able to try it myself or be able to dabble in some woodworking. I was just drawn to that stuff, and I wanted to go to the trades program, but again, I think because of my disability and my academics, a lot of the school counselors were like, "No, you shouldn't go to the technical center." So I took all the pre-engineering courses, things like that, but I didn't really love engineering. I didn't. So I talked to my teachers and I said, what does it mean to be a technology education teacher? And they said, um, they kind of explained the pathway, and they said, go to SUNY Oswego, which is where I went, best college in the nation, in my opinion. But it was a great experience there. So that's what drew me into education. And then I started out as a middle school teacher. I taught three years of middle school, just general. It was just a shop class when I got there, kind of renovated it the best I could, and really focused on engineering design and problem solving, right? The class was called
Nice.
Technology
Yeah.
Foundations and Inventions and Innovations, but it all came down to what are those core skills that anyone needs to be successful, and that's the ability to think critically, problem solve, create that kind of stuff. So I really targeted on that. I wanted to try high school after that, so I went to the high school setting. They're small school districts, so I taught anything they needed me to: TV, media production,
Yeah.
photography, engineering, teachers training academy, probably some stuff I'm forgetting. And then started to get this passion for leadership, started going down that route, and ended up in Louisa County Public Schools, where I've been for almost 10 years and have done things in 10 years that I didn't think I would do in 30 years of a career. I'm sure we'll talk about some of that, but
Wow.
it's been an amazing ride. It's been a fast ride, and it's been just awesome to be able to take crazy ideas and bring them to life, and watch the impact it has on students.
Yeah, how rewarding. I definitely can relate as it relates to your earlier comment with your father. Learning through osmosis is not always my strong suit. I definitely am a hands-on, need to kind of integrate myself into the process, iterate on it a couple of times as well. But I love also the comment you mentioned of just bringing different ideas to life. That's been a reality of our world. As I mentioned, of course, what we do is leverage interest-based pathways to introduce career opportunities and those different roadmaps to students and end users. And it's been exciting just to be able to conceive an idea and then say, let's put that into practice. How does that go? And quite literally, it's been what's gotten us here to this day. And so I love to hear, or I love to hear those similarities and also the kind of some of those nuanced pieces that I think most of us can relate to as well. Um, and yeah, overall, just that mindset of you were asking those questions to your educators. Was that in high school in regards to what does it look like to be a teacher, or was that
Yeah.
when you went to
No, it
college?
was in high school. Yeah. And the interesting thing is that
Wow.
a lot of I was driving that, right? Like I was saying, "Hey, I really want to be a teacher." And I remember we had to take a participation in government class, and one of the things we had to do was community service hours. And people were going and like, picking up trash and doing these things. And I said, "Can I walk to the middle school?" Because the middle school was close. I said, "Can I walk to the middle school every day and be a teacher assistant for Mr. Schlegel, who was my seventh and eighth grade
Nice.
teacher?" And there was a little bit
Yeah,
of kind of
yeah.
like, but they let me do it. But like I was driving that. So now as a CT director, I try to build programs. I mean, we could talk for 3 hours, but one of the things I built here is a teacher training academy. We had one
Uh-huh.
already, but it wasn't super strong. So we've built an entire daycare program. We have 30 children in the ages 3 to 5, and our high school kids come over every day, multiple times a day, and spend time in that lab teaching. And we have various levels. So from, hey, I don't know if I want to be a teacher, let me try this, all the way up to I'm
Mhm.
committed to be a teacher. I'm already taking college credit, and I'm going to work in Louisa County Public Schools after I graduate with my teaching degree. And that a
Yeah.
lot of that drive came from me saying, like, when I wanted to be a teacher, there was nobody there really fostering that and telling me how to do it. It was just kind of like, well, yeah, go to college. Well, what, like where and what programs, and with technology education,
Exactly.
there's only two in the state of New York, one in the state of Virginia. There's not a lot of options for stuff like that. So, and certainly there's creative endorsement pathways. And we talk about that with our students. We say like, these are add-on endorsements. You can do this, you can do that. But that coaching wasn't really there for me back in 2004. 3, whatever it was. And the funny thing is, I actually hated high school so much I graduated a year early just so I could go out, get an education, come back and be back in high school teaching, and spend the rest of my time in school. So it's kind of wild that's how it went for me. But I think I made the right decision. I'm really happy with where I am.
No, that's awesome. And kudos just on that self-awareness. That's big. I think that's often a key piece that's missing nowadays of, a lot of times when I'm interacting with students, I say, what do you want to do? And there's
Yeah.
always that either just immediate, I don't know, just as a safety net to say, I don't know. And or, sometimes there's just a lack of doubt around what is possible or the existing, to your point, resources that allow for that opportunity to really be like, I think I could do
Yeah.
this, even though I know I want to, but I don't think I can. Yeah, that's
I'd love to
big.
touch on that for a second because I think that's a big thing that we
Sure.
get lost in this field in CTE, right? And it's a political landscape sometimes, and I'm not going to get into all that, but we talk about like we need these kids to be career ready by the time they graduate high school. Go ask any single adult that you know right now. When you were 17, 18 years old, did you know that you were going to be doing at 35 today what you're doing when you were 17, 18? Like kids don't know, and it's not developmentally respectful to expect them to know that. So
Yeah.
my drive and motivation behind growing CTE pathways has always been give them the opportunity to explore. Yes, a completer sequence is great, a certification is great, and we should try to give them that opportunity to get those things, but also give them the opportunity to take automotive one and say, hey, this was great knowledge, and now if my car breaks down on the side of the road, I can at least change my tire and maybe do my own oil, but I know I don't want to be a mechanic. Same thing with our
Yeah.
teacher training academy. The number of kids that we have come in that say, well, I thought I wanted to be a teacher, but after a month or two of doing this, I decided I don't want to anymore. That's just as valuable as the kids who said that they did, because now those kids aren't
Yeah.
paying 30, 40, 80, $100,000 a year for a college education to go in a career that they're going to burn out of in a year. Right. So give
Yeah.
them as many opportunities to explore as possible. Try to hone in their interests a little bit to get them, in a pathway with a certification and to really explore, do they like it? But really, exploration is not bad. It's good.
Hmm.
And a lot of people are doing it now in their 20s and 30s. And if we can start doing that earlier in high school, that's where we're going to make them career ready, is cutting out that 10, 15 years of their adult life trying to figure out where they want to go. So that's my speech on that.
No, you're right there on the money. I agree. I follow up that same question of what do you want to do? And anytime I don't get an immediate kind of response or, positive indicators, I say, well, what do you not want to
Right.
do?
Yeah.
Some people say I don't want to deal with anything where I have to, wear a suit to the office, or I don't want to work in a cubicle, or I can't deal with blood. And that always helps kind of define or refine some of your options. So I think that's a great call out. And that's something that I've used in just conversation to say, well, walk me through an ideal day or maybe a nightmare of a day. And then we can define maybe what works for you as well. So that's great. I can definitely tell that this is something that, to your point, I can talk to and talk about this for multiple
Yeah.
hours. And just to kind of move the conversation forward here, what does that day in the life aspect look like for you? I know you mentioned you spent some time in the classroom, but now within leadership as a director, within the county, you have, I imagine, a multi-pronged role given the fact that it's you're in your title. There's a few different verticals there as
Yeah.
well.
Wildly different. There's some days where I just sit at my desk all day and I'm, dealing with, we just went through a federal CTE programs audit where I could be doing paperwork, which is when you say, what's the day that you don't want your day to look like, is where I sit at my desk all day. Um,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
as an administrative leader, I'm supporting instruction. In Louisa County, I'm blessed to be a part of our instructional team and an integral part. So CTE is not
Hmm.
thought of as something else. So I'm sitting in all the same meetings when we're talking about reading interventions and
Oh
curriculum
man.
development and all those things. And I'm offering ideas, not all the time because I'm not an expert in reading interventions and things like that. But that's where that director of innovation comes in. I tell people that COVID kind of launched my career because I had started here like a year or two before COVID-19 hit. And I was in a lot of these meetings, but I wasn't able to really like show the innovative side of my brain too much. And then when COVID hit, we all came together as a team nonstop all the time. We were working every day, 10-hour days trying to figure out how are we going to do school. And I was constantly coming up with like all these different ideas. Like, well, what if we did it like this? Or what if we did it
Nice.
like this? And that might have been like the worst thing for my career too, because now what that turned into is like, well, Kenny should be in a lot of these meetings because he has these different off the wall ideas that other people don't think of. Um, so
Yep.
it's, whether I'm sitting in instructional team meetings, we have a huge, I'm in a lot of athletic meetings because our TV media program, part of our CT program, supports athletics. So I'll be in a lot of athletic
I love
meetings
it.
talking about that. I'm leading AI for the school division. So I'm working with teachers one on one with AI initiatives. I'm putting out things on our AI website. I'm developing AI newsletters. I'm in classrooms. I'm building things. If you see this shelf
Hmm.
behind me, there's not a book on that. There's tape and screws and all kinds of stuff. And I actually have like a miter saw and a whole rolling toolbox setup that's all at the high school right now because I'm building a locker room. We just got a new
No kidding.
JRTC program and we need to be able to store all this
Yeah.
stuff. So between meetings, I'm taking the shirt and tie off and I'm in sawdust and I'm literally building cabinets because I know how to do it and I can do it quicker than if we ordered it and I can save us 10 grand doing it. Um,
There we
I'm
go.
designing complex spaces. So we're doing a 60,000 square foot CT center right now. So before this, I just came out of a meeting where we were going through all the equipment lists, all the furniture cut sheets, talking about colors. We've been
Yeah.
doing that for probably a year and a half. We are well under construction now, so we're to the point where we're like picking colors and we're picking furniture. Um, so yeah, I mean it's all over the place, and sometimes I'm in the Little Lions, building, and I'm getting hugged by 3 year olds, and then other times I'm up in the high school and I'm filming video content with high school kids, and we're working football games Friday, Saturdays, and just kind of all over the board. I spend some time in the middle school too. I don't want to leave them out, but and for a long time I was doing elementary STEAM as well, and I was in all the elementary schools
Hmm.
doing stuff. But we have kind of transitioned that to our director of elementary because it's just there's only so much time in a day. So yeah, it's a wild ride.
Yeah.
Like I said, I mean, it's nonstop all day, every day, but I wouldn't give it up for anything.
Wow. How cool. There's a few things that you mentioned there. I'll kind of circle back on. You mentioned just the fact that you're actually integrated into the meetings with the larger department heads. I think that's key and critical. Again, we have a certain ethos within the community foundation in regards to just the relevance and the existing utility that CTE provides. Again, I know earlier, maybe when I was coming up, it was just called, trade program or vocation training. But I'm glad now that CTE is getting a little bit more of a just recognition as it relates to its, again, relevance within education as a whole. Some students will absolutely progress through more of a traditional linear model of, hey, I'm a, reading, writing, math. and I'm going straight into higher ed, and but also a good number of us as well, can see the value of it and experience the value of that CTE component. So I'm glad that that's, integrated into the larger framework. And I understand how sometimes those ideas that you propose lead to more work.
Yeah,
I say it all the
absolutely.
time. Every every time I get a yes, or every time we have a good day, that means we have more work to do. So that's just the reality of leadership as well. But kudos again to Dad for teaching you the skills that allows you all not to have to outsource building out
Yeah,
a locker room or a number of different
yeah.
facilities. That's
Don't tell him,
pretty
but I think
cool.
I'm a better cabinet maker than he is now. But don't tell him I said it. Luckily, he's not an internet guy. He won't see this.
No
Yeah,
kidding. Okay, no, your secret safe with me, but that's fun, and I think that's just that a continuous value add to speak to. Imagine what someone might be able to add value to within the shop program or within again this tech
yeah,
training, even if their you know work or their actual job title is a little bit different than the actual skills they
yeah.
possess. I think that is exactly
Well, one
where
of the big
I'm
things,
sure
yeah,
you're.
well, one of the big things
Go
that I
ahead.
always tell people, a lot of the things we pull off, and it's hard to explain it without seeing it, but a lot of the lab spaces we pull off, people walk in and they go, "How did you do this? Like, how did
Yeah.
you build this space?" And when I say, "Well, we did that, and we did this, and we did this," that's we collectively. Like, I'm leveraging my CTE programs now. I try to do it in a very responsible way. I think it's easy to walk into
Yep.
a CTE program and say, "Hey, can the kids do this?" And there's no world where the kids can do that because they're entry level kids who are just starting and are just learning. And like, hey, can the kids build an addition on my house? No, probably not. Um, so I try to be very mindful about what are those entry points where we can say, "Hey, can the kids do this?" And then what are those entry points where I can leverage equipment that we have or skill sets that our instructors have to get something done. So we've done a lot of wild
Hmm.
off the wall things, and it's to exactly what you just said. It's figuring out how can you leverage what you have to get it done. Because if I do this for $2,000 instead of paying $12,000 to have somebody else do it, now that's more money in my budget to do more things. So that's how we really blow out these wild instructional spaces, and just do really neat stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure the county loves having you there. You're
They
it sounds like you're a gym into the space. Walk me through some of those other aspects of your role. You mentioned CTE, and of course, understand the relevance of that component and how it also might relate to STEAM. But I heard, of course, within your role, there's innovation, and then you also mentioned AI. What do some of those aspects look like as it relates to just that day to day, or even the larger overarching objectives within that vertical?
Yeah, I'll start with AI. I mean, AI is probably one of the hottest topics right now. We've been working in the AI space for about 2 years. I would say we were one of the first
Hmm.
school divisions in Virginia to start down the AI pathway of saying, we need to develop some guidance and we need to figure out how we're going to let our teachers and our students incorporate this new technology. We were
Yeah.
pretty quick to find a way. Like, so we work with School AI, which is a platform that allows us to create AI spaces where students can go in and we can monitor what they're doing, and we can also program those
Hmm.
spaces to ensure safety. So we're
Nice.
not trying to force AI on anyone right now. We're trying to bring people along by showing them how valuable it is. So we started out with our first real year of saying, let's show our administrators how to use AI. Let's show them how our teachers, how they can do some time saving things. And let's start having the discussion about what this looks like to open it up to students. Year two, we said, okay, now we're opening up to students and we're going to double down more on teaching teachers. So we did a lot more PD around how you can save time with AI. And that to me, that's my end. Like, when I can start showing them how they can save time in their day, then they start to realize the power of it and where they can use it other places. I was excited to see that they started going to student use a lot faster than I thought. So we had over
Yeah.
500 plus custom spaces launched last year. That doesn't mean
Nice.
that every
Okay.
single one of them was full of kids all the time, but that's 500 opportunities for our students to interact with AI in different ways where we're kind of managing that process. And then this year we're really looking at, growing those numbers. Luckily our staff for the most part are bought in. Like 80% of our staff say they absolutely want more AI training, no question, no doubt about it, and they want to know how to use it. I would say about 10 are
Hmm.
kind of like, I think it's going to ruin the world and I don't want to touch it. And I tell them all the time, you're probably not wrong. Like, there's really no right or wrong in AI. We don't know what it's going to look like, and there's
Yeah.
going to be benefits long term. There's a lot. I mean, we're curing diseases right now that we never would have cured before if it wasn't for AI, and it's wild and it's exciting. But there's certainly drawbacks, right? And so
Yep.
listening to them and hearing them and saying, like, I always joke in my presentation, like, some people say AI is going to ruin the world, and you're probably right. Like, I can't tell you you're wrong. Um, but I
Yeah.
can tell you it's here and it's not going away. And just because you don't use it doesn't mean it's not going to keep going and developing. And we need to prepare our students to live in a world to do that. So that's kind of the big AI side. The CTE side, we're looking at pathways, we're looking at data. We're making sure we have
Mhm.
the right programs for our students. We're making sure that enrollment is high. We're making sure that the curriculum instruction that happens in those classes is solid. We're trying to provide them as many real world opportunities as we can. Again, like I said, I have a partner, Bo Bundrick. He's the director of CTE workforce development for Louisa County. So he's doing all the
Got it.
work-based learning, internships, apprenticeships, working through all that.
Ah.
We have so many programs in Louisa. We're a school division about 5,000 large, about 15, 1,600 at our high school. So we have two
Mhm.
automotive teachers. We have welding program, a carpentry program, a technology engineering program. We have three ag teachers, from vet science to turf management to greenhouse horticulture. We have barbering,
Nice.
cosmetology, cybersecurity, business courses, TV media, computer science courses. We have about 27 certified CTE teachers between the middle and the high school. We have probably about 35 CTE staff between those two buildings. We have some instructional assistants helping out in some different areas. Um,
That's
so
awesome.
very robust program, the Teacher Training Academy, what I talked about. And then in the expansion with the CTE Center, we're looking at expanding some like culinary arts. So we would have two culinary arts instructors, a bigger lab to host bigger events. We're moving some programs over. Little known fact about Louisa, there was an earthquake many years ago that destroyed the high school. The epicenter was right here in Mineral, Virginia. So they rebuilt the high
Wow.
school from the ground up. But when they rebuilt it, some of the lab spaces were a little smaller than they were originally. Square footage costs more. So some of our programs just aren't in ideal spaces right now. And then some of our
Mhm.
programs were new that we converted some other weird space into this. So is it working? Yes, but is it ideal? Probably not.
Yeah.
So in this
Yeah.
this 60,000 square foot expansion is going to have, you know, some programs relocate, but then we're looking at adding HVAC, electrical, plumbing, marine services technology. We're expanding Little Lions into there to make it one huge wing. So that's our teacher training academy program. We're expanding welding. We're going to expand. We're putting a 3,000 square foot lab. So really enhancing what we've been doing already, just taking it to the next level. And if you want to learn more, um, there's not a lot on our CT Center on there, but on our website, www.lcps.org, there's a courses button, and we have a whole course catalog, which is one of the first things I did when I came to Louisa my first year. Was I said I worked one county over in Goochland, and I knew nothing about what Louisa County Public Schools had to offer. We're probably about
Yeah.
3 times the size and offerings of Goochland County. And I remember when I came and I interviewed, and I'm not, they're a smaller division too, so it would make sense that they would have less. But I came in thinking that, like, well, I work in Goochland and we have a great program, and Louisa, I've never even heard of them. And I
Right.
remember
Yeah.
they toured me around the school before I was offered the job, and I said, I don't care who you hire, but based on what I've seen right now, you need to make sure that whoever you hire, the first thing they do is share with the world what you have here, because you have so much. And I'm one county over and didn't know anything. So one of the first things I did that first year was, how do we promote everything we have? And I tell people
Yeah.
that that's strategic, because not only are you trying, CT is elective based, you're trying to get kids in the courses, but you're also trying to get community buy-in. So when you go and you ask
Mhm.
to build a $30 million, 60,000 square foot CT center, if no one knows what you have, how are you going to get the community support for that bond referendum to get that done? So that whole
Yeah. No
first
kidding.
year was huge on just highlighting and promoting the programs and showing everybody, here's what we have. And like I said, we've added, I think eight or nine programs in the 9 years that I've been here. And again, that's not all me. That's a team. Our superintendent, Doug Straley, is amazing. Bo Bundrick, my partner, is great. We're always looking at how can we leverage different things. We have a CTE secretary, Susan Pleasance, who fills in all the holes that we miss. And then the whole instructional team, school board, board of supervisors, like, CTE here is a team effort, and we're all running in the same direction. And we don't always agree all the time. That's any working environment. But I
Yeah.
think at the end of the day, we come to the best conclusions for our school and our community. So that was a lot. I think I hopefully I hit on everything for you there. But
Yeah. No, that's helpful. And I'm tracking on every point there. You mentioned, and I'll kind of go in that same order. You mentioned, of course, as it relates to AI. there being that early focus on the teacher, PD and kind of their understanding and really comfortability. I agree to your point. We don't know where AI is going to take us, but it's definitely here to stay. And it really and truly, I've always, I heard and then I always repeat the same aspect of it's not the AI that's going to take your job. It's really the person that's utilizing AI that's going to take your
100%.
job. Even for the trades that we see, oh, I can never do this. I had an individual share, even for plumbing and electrical work, a lot of times you're thinking that's going to only be done with a real in-person technician. But imagine the technician that's taking a picture of the scenario and getting an immediate kind of if you will, synopsis of what needs to be done next. That
100%.
just shortens the entire timeline. And to your point, it's here to stay. What is that? What are those environments? So those, and I need to do my own kind of reading up on classroom AI, but or school
Mhm.
AI, I think that's what you called it. What do those different environments or classrooms look like as you all are building those out? I heard you mention 500 have been
Yeah.
built.
So
Is
the
that
teachers
focused on one topic? But yeah,
No, the
go ahead.
teachers have the ability to build them however they want. So basically, what
Hmm.
you're doing is you're figuring out what you want the AI to help the student with. So, for instance, if it's writing, you might say you would program it to say, under no circumstances are you to write the essay for the student. But what I want you to
Good.
do is
Wow.
when they submit their writing, I want you to give them feedback on, like what needs to be enhanced, what could be changed, or suggestions on different ways they could take the conversation. One of the early things that I did, like one of the first times, was help me outline my paper. And that was just like the
Yep.
bot that I created. And it would start asking you questions like, okay, what topics are you interested in? Well, I like trucks. Okay, what type of trucks do you like? Are you talking like old school trucks, tractor trailer trucks, like farm trucks, this kind of truck? And I'm just playing with it, kind of going down. There's also like math tutoring where it can ask you a bunch of questions and then you answer them and it gives you instant feedback. Um, there's historical figure things where you could set up like chat with Abraham Lincoln, and here's some questions that you could ask Abraham Lincoln about his time as president. And so it's like that
Yeah.
kind of, it's that one's more fun to me. It's like it gives them the
Hmm.
opportunity to go back and forth. Um, and like our teachers for tomorrow students, they use them for lesson planning. And people say like, well, they need to learn how to plan lessons. Tell me what teacher out there right now is not leveraging AI to plan their lessons. So,
Come on.
right,
That's
like
really, yeah.
that's what we're training them for. So there's all kinds of different ways that you can create and develop these spaces. And now there's new features too, where like Canva has image generation, it has document generation, it has a lot of cool stuff. It has some video stuff in there. They don't have access to everything because everything is expensive and everything isn't really appropriate. Like the image generation stuff, you have to be
Hmm.
very careful on that because there's different interpretations of
Sure.
what's appropriate and what's not. Um,
Sure.
but basically we're just trying to provide them with the opportunities to learn. And our whole messaging too is similar to what you said, is like, don't, I was afraid that was going to happen, sorry, don't don't use AI in place of you. Use AI as an assistant to you, as a tool, right?
Hmm.
So just all kinds of different ways that we can leverage it in that way. So it's exciting to see it growing. We're seeing a lot with creativity too, to be honest with you. Like the ones where people really run the fastest with it is with creating stuff like images, videos, combining all that
Yep.
stuff together.
No, that's great, and that gives me a good snapshot of what the capabilities are. I like that controlled environment where you're embracing it, but putting up the guardrails,
Mm-hmm.
right? I've seen so many times where it's like, well, we don't understand it, or I've heard what the outlier worst case scenario is, and so we're going to totally abandon, exploration or adoption. And I don't think that's the correct approach. Going into a few more things that you mentioned a little bit previously as it relates to just the various offerings. Glad to hear that you all have a robust offering. I've had a few conversations with other CTE directors, and I'm starting to just get a good quality sense of the various, trades or kind of programs that are being offered. And I think that's great. It's always that same kind of feeling though of, man, how come they didn't have this
Yeah.
when I was in
Yeah.
school? Right. I think there was probably like two offerings at my school, and it wasn't something that spoke to me. Of course, like, the culinary component, and I believe the other one was more so focused on like traditional engineering. But that's how it goes,
Yep.
right? And then you also mentioned, just as it relates to the upcoming space that's being built, that really just, I think, is unique. Is that campus attached to the high school, or
Yes.
is that the district campus? Where is
Yeah,
that at?
so
Yeah.
that was a big conversation for us. We had 90 acres of land adjacent to the high school, so not far, maybe like less than an eighth of a mile.
Yeah.
And we were going to build it
Wow.
there originally. And that would have been a great site because it was 90 acres of empty space. So the sky's the limit on whatever you want to do outside there. But in a lot of our
Sure.
conversations, it was, well, if we do that, we're now dividing our program and we're dividing our high school and we're turning it into an
Yeah.
environment. I'm not saying this is bad necessarily. Like
Hmm.
there are reasons why you would do this, but we're turning it into an environment where we're saying, okay, these are tech center kids and these are high school kids. These kids are going to spend half their day at the tech center, and these kids,
I
right?
see.
So we said one of
Yeah.
our big theme at our high school is one family. So when you start saying like, well, you're going over to Louisa Tech and you're here, like, are you still
Hmm.
one family? I mean, you are, but like, does it still feel that way? And same with our CT
Yep.
staff. We
Yep.
have a really cohesive group who, we all work together really well. We all collaborate. So we actually instead are building it in front of our high school. There was a large
Hmm.
plot that was empty where there used to be the old high school, actually. And then we're connecting it with a sky bridge. Um, so basically, you'll go up
Smart.
to the second floor of the high school, you'll go over top of our bus loop, and then you'll go down and into the new CT center. So now it's
Nice.
all one cohesive building. It's secure. So there's no like going outside to walk back and forth. We're able to put a pretty
Yep.
robust service yard outside of it. So it's the size of about 3 football fields. So when I say
No
like,
kidding.
the site wasn't ideal, it's still great. I mean,
Yeah.
there are a lot of people who I think would say we wish we had that. Um, but would it, we all believe that long term it was the right move for our high school to put it, like you said, close proximity wise. You're cutting down on the busing, all that kind of stuff, more
Hmm.
instructional time. And I built the lab spaces honestly as big as I could. Square footage is expensive, and you hate to say money is no object. You wish you could say that, but you can't, right? So
Yeah.
like you start getting down to these dollars per square foot. Like a 3,000 square foot welding lab would have been nothing in the early 90s and late 80s. People would have said, oh, you should build
Hmm.
5,000. Nowadays, you go
Yeah.
to an architect and say, hey, we want a 3,000 square foot welding lab. They're like, well, that's bigger than anyone we've built in the last 10 years. Well, yeah,
No
but that's what
kidding.
we need. Like they're just
Yep.
not building. I have a friend who runs a regional technical center down near Virginia Beach, and it was built in like the 80s. And I mean, he has so much square footage that it's like you walk through there, it'll take you 2.5 hours just to walk through the whole building, right? But that's the way they were built back then. Costs on
Hmm.
everything have just gone up so high. You have to be more strategic with your space. But we feel really confident about the spaces we've designed, the size that they are. Everything is going up in size. Every program that's moving from the high school to this building is almost like doubling in square footage as far as the amount of size they're getting. So,
No
yeah,
kidding.
we should have some pretty happy teachers on our hands once we transition over.
I love that. I love that. And that transitions us well into the next kind of few questions I have, thinking through just as end users. What is the demand like at the student level? Is there a lot of interest and engagement for the different CTE programs or even some of the, kind of AI curriculum that you all are introducing? And then how do you all kind of identify who can participate? Is it purely student election, or is it something that you all kind of have more of a criteria in regards to selection for these
Yeah,
participation?
it's a good question. It's really a mixed bag for our CTE courses. I'll start there. We do course requests every year, starting usually around January, February, and I keep a good
Hmm.
track on those numbers. So I'm looking across every year to see, do we have a course that for the past 4 or 5 years has been trending down in course requests?
Ah,
And again, I'm also
yeah.
looking at the data. Like a good example is we had students say, well, we really want to take a floral design class. And we were like, well, that sounds fun, but it's a negative 22% job growth with an annual salary of like $22,000 a year. So I don't
Good
know that
call.
that's a good area for us to invest our funds in, right? For that course.
Yeah.
So we're looking at that data. We're looking at student enrollment data. And then some of our courses are very, very competitive. Like you mentioned, culinary arts, we have probably
Hmm.
200 course requests for 40 to 60 seats a year, hence why we're doubling it and adding another teacher. So then
Yeah.
that's where we start getting into application processes where we start saying, hey, for these identified courses, you need to do an application and be selected. And that application isn't really just based on grades. It's based on,
Hmm.
like you said earlier, like kind of what are your career outcomes? Why do you want to take this class? Teacher recommendations, that kind of stuff. I would say maybe
Hmm.
35 to 40% of our courses now have applications. What I tell teachers is if you don't have full sections, it, I'm not going to put an application on your class because the only reason we would limit a kid's ability to take the class is if we didn't have enough seats, right? So
Yeah.
I don't
Good.
want to turn
Good.
any kid away who wants to learn, and I wish we had enough seats for everybody. But when we don't, we have
Hmm.
to make sure that the kids who really want it, like if my daughter, I have a daughter, my daughter's goal is to be a nurse, then her best time is going to be set in the nursing class, not in the culinary class. So I want to do everything I can
Yep.
do to actually get her into the nursing class. Um, so that's, I didn't mention nursing earlier. We have so many, I forget them all when I'm going through them. But so that's where we try to be a little bit strategic on that. And we also try to keep some ninth grade classes open for that dabbling, where like we know,
Good.
hey,
Oh,
here's a slew of courses that you're definitely probably going to get into. And we bring all of our eighth graders over. We have them tour all the CTE programs, but we also tell them like, hey, as a ninth grader, you're probably never going to get culinary arts. Just letting because seniority takes ranks. Um,
yep.
but
Yep.
you could possibly get into automotive because we have two automotive instructors and we have multiple sections of automotive, and so we kind of advise them a little bit on that. Like if you think you might want to do automotive, then that might be a good one for ninth grade year, and then try to get culinary next year, or, as a junior. And we also try to be specific about how long does it take to get through a program. Like cosmetology is a 3-year program for us. It leads to licensure, right? So we wouldn't put a
Yeah.
senior in cosmetology 1 because they're never going to finish it. So even though it might be good for them to dabble in that class, now you're taking away an opportunity from a kid who was going to go through all 3 years, get that license, and
Hmm.
potentially go out and work in that industry. So we have to be very strategic around that. As far as AI, we're elementary kids love it. They're all in. They think it's the funnest thing in the world to use it. Middle school kids are fine. High school kids all think it's cheating. So it's a little tough to, and this is
Ah,
what I tell
interesting.
people. I think they're using it. I think they're going home and they're using it, all the time. But when they're sitting in your room, they're like, I can't use AI. That's cheating. And it's like,
Yeah.
I know you're pulling out your phone the second you walk out of this door and you're chat GPT and everything that you don't know. So our
Yep.
teachers are trying to message to them like, it is cheating if you use it this way, but it's not cheating if you
Hmm.
use it this way. And that's a lot of the messaging that we're trying to push up through the grades. And that's not going to happen overnight. It's good decision making. And we don't even know in a lot of ways, like that we're still figuring out where is the line on that. So it's understandable that
Sure.
they would be confused on where that is too. Because you can write a guidance or a policy all day long, but that doesn't cover every single instance. So it's
Yeah.
good that they're
Yeah.
cautious about it, but I would say that's where our students are. It's our teachers are using it to enhance instruction. We're not at the point right now where we're instructing on how to use AI, but our goal is to get there soon, right? So I don't know
Yeah.
how soon that looks like. As you heard, there's a lot going on in my world, but I'm tackling it every bit that I can as we're moving forward in that area.
Yeah, that's interesting in regards to that relationship that the younger versus the older students have. I have a very young son. He's learning how to walk, so he's not near education quite yet. But I'm curious to just know how, not just young people being digital natives, but AI natives is going to look like. That's definitely kind of a question mark in the back of my head as
Yeah,
well.
and it's getting
Um,
built into so much that they're just doing naturally. Like when you do a Google search
yeah.
now, you're getting your AI results. My
Yep.
funny story, I'll
Yep.
tell you. My daughter was going through a campaign to try to get a puppy, and she was successful. We have a puppy now. We have a 15-year-old dog, and my wife and I said like when he passes, we won't get another one. So we still have him, and now we have a puppy. So,
Mm,
um, but
good on
yeah,
her.
so she had her iPad out, and she's like, "Hey, give me 25 names for a dog that's black and has white legs and blah blah blah." And I went to my wife, I said, that's not a Google search. Like that's how you would talk to AI. So I turned and I said, hey,
Hmm.
do you have Chat GPT on your iPad? She goes, yeah. I said, who put that on there? She said, you did. I was like, I said, yeah, that tracks. It makes sense that I would do that because I was helping her
Yeah.
study
Yeah.
one night and I was showing her. I said, you can go here and you can do this. And then I forgot I'd put it on there. So the kids take to it pretty quick the younger they are. But again, like you said, it's
Hmm.
important to teach them that digital citizenship. Don't believe everything you see. AI gets it wrong
Hmm.
a lot. I'd say 30% of the time it's not right. So still question
Yeah.
it, and leverage it for what it's good for, and don't try to leverage it for what it's not.
Yeah, agreed. And that's I love the fact that she, was able to build an argument and, an entire kind of maybe presentation. But that's awesome. That's awesome. That's exactly what it's, about being able to find those utility uh relevant you kind of ways to utilize the technology as well. I I thought of a kind of a question that off the top of the head, and I'm interested to get your, feedback. I heard you mention again just some of your upbringing and your relation to how you're able to build with your hands, but also still have that passion to teach. What are some of the topics, whether it's directly related to CTE or just as a, educator, as a person, what are some of those things that really make you kind of scoot to the edge of your chair or lean forward that are really passionate about, even though your role encompasses a lot? If you could kind of just share what you have a high affinity for, what are some of those things as well?
Yeah, for me, we're big in Louisa on the 5 C's, which is creativity, critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and citizenship. Um,
Okay.
and it's funny because citizenship is one that I've grown into as an adult. Like when I was a kid, if you said, is citizenship important? No. Uh, but I've had so many things, and I'm sure you have too. Things happen in my life. I've had tough times, and I've had people who've wrapped around and supported me. And as part of that, now
Hmm.
I have this drive to give back to anyone that I can help. And I think that comes with time. And we're trying to teach that as young as we can here in Louisa County Public Schools. And we could do a whole nother podcast just on that. We do so much stuff. But those other 4 C's to me are huge. Like when you say like, where do I get really excited? Because I think all 4 of those C's meld together to me into one thing. And that's just the ability to really solve problems. Because all the
Hmm.
time when I'm solving problems, I'm thinking critically, I'm communicating with others, I'm communicating my ideas, I'm being creative, right? I'm collaborating. I can't do everything myself. Like, so I'm so big into the problem solving process. And I that's what I really try to teach a lot. And I even teach it to our administrators sometimes. Like I'll do PDs on like, you don't know it, but when you solve problems, you do a process. And let me explain this process
Yeah.
to you so you can better define it and work through it. Um, and I really am so excited and open it into like open-mindedness. Like, when
Mm.
I say to people like, hey, Kenny, do you think we landed on the moon? I'm like, I don't, but I don't know enough to know that we didn't. So I'm
I
like
like
in this
that.
gray
Yeah.
space of like I can tell you what I think, but that doesn't mean that it means it's worth a hill of beans, right? And like some crazy stuff. Like I'll go in these deep conversations about aliens, and then I'll hear other people give me these like crazy theories, and I'm like, well, you there's nothing that says you're wrong, right? Like so
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
so for me, it's always living in that world of like both sides can be right at the same time. And that's the whole political landscape too, of like we get into so much turmoil as like, well, I'm right and you're wrong. Like 90% of the time it's not that black and white. It's different
Yeah.
degrees of
Yeah.
understanding, and it's just different things. So I really try to teach kids like questioning a lot. And that's again part of that problem solving is like I question everything, and I'll like kind of play devil's advocate. And I remember I'll go back to even like my teaching days. It was the first election when I think Trump was elected for the first time. I was still teaching, and like my entire class thought that I was like a big Trump supporter because they weren't, and I was just always questioning them. And I was telling them like, I'm not telling you I support him. I'm just questioning what you're telling me. And like, have you questioned what you're
Uh-huh.
telling me? Because unless you've questioned your thinking, you really haven't thought deeply about it. So for me, it's like
Hmm.
just think deeply about every topic and have the humility to know that you could be wrong. um,
Yep.
and the Dunning Kruger effect is an interesting thing too. And I always think about myself in that way. Like I think I know a lot about things, but I don't know nearly anything. And so like if you stay in that mindset of like I know enough to be dangerous, but I don't know everything, you're always open to being wrong, and you're always open to growing and adjusting, and you're always wanting to learn.
Yes.
And like so to me, like I'm giving you like 15 different things, but I'm always
No, that's
seeking for
perfect.
knowledge and understanding. And when we go back to talk about my dad, like I'm so impressed with him and every generation before him because the amount of things that they know that they couldn't learn it in the way that we learn things. Like they can now, but
Yeah.
like anything we want to know,
Hmm.
we can go on YouTube and watch 15 instructional videos. They didn't have that. So they had to pick these
No
things
kidding.
up like in this one spot where they were, or they were just doing things and doing it wrong. But like we don't ever
Yep.
have to do anything wrong because we can look like it's all there. So
Wow, what a great and yeah, call
yeah,
out.
so I just tell everybody like anything you ever want to do, there's no excuse to why you can't do it. It's just a question of do you want to put in the time, do you want to put in the energy? And AI even takes that up a level. And that's what I tell people about
Yep.
AI. Like there are things and like I do these videos things that people look at and they go, "That's amazing. How did you do it?" I'm like, "I did it in 4 seconds on my cell phone." Like I would have never been able to do that 5 years ago, but now I can. Like just yeah, that I don't even know that I gave you a comprehensive answer there, but that's
I,
that's what gets me going.
no, I'm tracking. So again, I I think there's a great synergy here in regards to like the things that we're excited about. Because to your point that earlier, first, just willingness to problem solve. I think I've shared the similar type of insight or kind of advice of even if you've never done it before, there's still a framework to operate
Yep.
from, right? And because, a lot of times, many of us have done things for the first time, but you have to kind of start with that first principles thinking. And I love that piece. And then, in regards to the openness aspect, I think that's a key trait that I have high on my personality list is, openness that really, that along with problem solving has led me to where I am now.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's too
but,
like what you said, like a lot of people tell me all the time, like, well, with your innovation path, you're out there doing things that other people aren't doing. How do you do those things? And it's like, well, first of all, everyone's pretty much done everything. It's just a matter of knowing where to look and knowing what
yeah,
pieces you can take from every different thing and put them together in a different way. Right. So it's
yeah,
like cooking. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
everyone's cooked a steak out there. Tons of people cooked a steak, but there are these like 5-star chefs, and it's because they take little pieces from all these different recipes and do it their way. And that's
yeah,
when everyone says like you're so innovative, like, no, that's just my way. That's the way I do it. And somebody else is doing it in a different way, and they're more innovative than I am possibly. So it's, where do you go to look for inspiration when you're trying to solve a problem? And that it's I never really thought that was a skill set until I got older, and I realized that not everybody can do that. I think you can learn it. I really do. But I think it takes a lot of time. And I'll go back. I don't talk about this a lot. You're the first one to ever get this theory out of me. Um, I think a lot of that comes back to my disability because I can't see as well as everybody else does. So there was so much time I spent
mm,
like sitting in the back of the classroom because I didn't want to be like that kid that had to sit in the front of the room. And teachers are talking about
interesting.
things on the board, and I can't see any of it. So in my mind, I'm making these visual images of what they're showing me, whether they were right or
Yeah,
wrong. So I'm constantly flexing that muscle in my brain of like, how do I take what I'm hearing? How do I take what I see on my worksheet? How do I take what I see other kids doing and put that together to what's actually up there? And,
hmm,
so like, I think that's where my brain has gotten good at doing that because I have to do it all the time. Like everything for me is a problem. Before I walk out the door of my
yeah,
house in the morning, there's 5 problems that I have to think through so that I can operate just as anyone else does. Right. And I think that's where I've
yeah.
developed that skill in. But I think it can be learned. Like people say, like, "Oh, I'm not creative," and you are. I don't think that's true. I think it's like working out a muscle. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing that. And I think that's insightful, not only for me, but for our listeners, who I didn't even mention. A lot of our listeners are educators or aspiring educators as well, or those who are in that, kind of youth development or workforce development space as well. So I think that's really insightful. And then in a similar way, you mentioned just that consistency around asking questions. I also emphasize just the reality of asking questions is the act of creating
mhm.
intelligence, right? Even if you don't have the answer immediately available to you, you know, what you do is you actually put your subconscious to work once you actually verbalize and ask questions. And then the answer can present itself to you maybe a day later, a year later, but you may not recognize it if you didn't prime yourself with that question in the first place. So I quite literally love that. And that's a piece that I preach and teach and live by as well. And that's what's gotten me here to this day. So I love that. And I caught every bit of the things that, to your point, kind of scoot you to the edge of your chair and what you're, very passionate around. I like the 5 C's as well. I think that's something that not only myself, but others might be able to really complement or, implement within our respective spaces. So that's great. Maybe just with the last few questions, and I can keep going, but I want to respect your time here as well. Just thinking through, just as you all have a lot in motion right now, I definitely get the idea of where you all want to go and how you all want to distinguish yourselves as a county. But I love to ask the kind of that magic wand question of, if you could have it your way, what would things look like? You mentioned earlier budget, so that might be an aspect of just like a bottomless,
Yeah.
bucket of money, right? But love to hear some of the things that you would really want to just see or accomplish or realize if you can have things your way without restriction.
Yeah, I mean, I got to tell you that Louisa County, the board of supervisors, the school board, have been amazing.
Yeah.
We have a joke. We do tours. We bring the school board and the board of supervisors in, and we build that buy-in and that capacity around our schools because the schools can really be the beating heart of the community. And we have a joke like
Hmm.
we walk in a space. One time I made a joke and I said, Mr. Strayler, my superintendent said, blow it out. So now like we'll walk into a space and be like, Kenny, did you blow this one out too? Like, like that's like the ongoing joke. But w- you know, an endless amount of money almost isn't a good thing either when you think about that. Like you can almost get
Ah,
too crazy and like too wild in
that's
what you're
refreshing.
doing. Yeah, so you have to be,
Yeah,
it's a fine balance, and I think we're in that. Like if I go to my school and I say we need this, 9 times out of 10 I'm going to get it. If I say it would be great to have this, 9 times out of 10 I get it. You know, and I don't go and ask for outlandish things, because that's where you start to draw
yeah.
away from the main goal and objectives of the organization, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
more space is always better. Having more, you just, even like our campus, we're running out of space on our campus, so the ability to be able to have more physical space to just build like outdoor build sites, or do different things like that. That's what really limits us all the time, whether it's indoor space or outdoor space. We're limited by what we can do inside of that space, and it's never enough. And I always tell everybody we never build anything big enough, because we just really can't. But also some of that is a growth aspect. Like you have to prove it's feasible before you expand it, right? So
Yeah,
um, we put in a makerspace at the high school a couple of years ago. And I hate to call it that, because it's actually much more than what most makerspaces are. But
yeah.
it's in its second year now, and they're already asking me like, when I say they're already asking me, I'm saying like superintendent and things are saying, how can we make this bigger? Because it
Nice.
because it's
Wow.
shown to be so successful. So I think that's a good piece of advice I'd give to anybody, is like, learn where your inflection points are, to where you can make the biggest difference and the biggest impact, and you can show the huge success that you're having, and then have your backup plan right behind that success to say, and we could take it to the next level if we do this, and then we could take it to the next
Hmm.
level if we do this. And I will tell you, like where I am now in Louisa County, if I say, hey, I would like to see if we could get like $80,000 to revamp this classroom space, I don't get a lot of questions. I get like, absolutely, if that's what you need, I'm going to try to get it for you, or let me wait till the end of this budget cycle, see what it looks like. But my first year, it was like, what do you mean you can do that? Do we need to get a contractor in? Let's call this person in and make sure that like, I don't get those questions
Yeah, I
anymore.
see.
But it's because I built that reputation to where people know, if I say, hey, we can do this, it's going to get done, and it's going to get done well. So if you're starting out early in your career, and I'm probably way off your pathway here, but don't be offended when you get those questions, because it's people's jobs to
Hmm.
question that and know that you're going to be successful. And that's what I have to tell a lot of our young teachers too that start. Like I question a lot of what they're doing, and they can get frustrated. And I say, listen, it would be irresponsible for me to let you go down a pathway where I know you're not going to be successful. And I have, 9 years of classroom experience, all this leadership experience. I was a teacher of the year when
Yeah.
I was a teacher. So like, I know what good curriculum instruction looks like. I know the walls you're going to hit before you're going to hit them. Like, take the advice at least for a little while. And then once you build your rapport, run the directions you want to run in. Um, so,
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I rambled a lot there. I'm sorry. I tend to do that, but
No, that was
yeah,
perfect. You kind of hit two birds with one stone there, because I typically kind of conclude, or and if you can you feel free to expound on this piece, but advice that you would give to other teachers, educators, and stakeholders within our youth's lives. And you just mentioned not taking no personal, and not necessarily letting it fully halt your efforts, but really recognizing just the, again, that we mentioned before, the utility in asking some of those questions, or having those questions asked. So
yeah,
you gave me both respects, but I'll ask if you have anything else to refine in that regard,
yeah. I
or
would say
further add. Yeah,
always
yeah,
be excited about what you're doing, and always be excited about
yeah,
the potential outcome at the end, and know that the things that you're doing have the potential to change lives. And I've had
yeah.
conversations with people about educators who have changed my life and don't even know it, right? And there have been inflection points that
Yeah.
I can go back and I can look at, where if I would have made a different decision, everything about my life would be different. It could be better,
Hmm.
who knows? But you know, every interaction you have with a student is shaping and molding them in some type of way. And understand that just because to you think that this is, and I can look back on my teaching career. I remember one student I had in particular who was a quiet student, my TV media production class, and she did pretty good editing, and then got better and better and better, and like by the end of the year was pretty good. And she told me at the end of the year, she goes, yeah, I really want to do this for a job. And I like felt terrible because I never would have pegged her in the beginning of the year as somebody that wanted to do this as a career. And I should have put more time and energy into her and her development and growth. Right. But I missed that. And I remember I
Yeah,
called their
yeah.
parents and I said, hey, I want to let you know that she's great. And like, she's really developed a lot. And it was my last year there. And I said, I think you should try to find like, if you can find a summer program or something for her to get into. But like, you're going to have those missed things too, and just try to do the best that you can do to help and support. Because it really, like, we make a big difference, and it's easy to forget that. It's easy to get bogged down in the day-to-day stuff. The grades are due, this kid was being disrespectful today, or I had this outburst in my class. And as a leader, I lose it. Like, I flip these spaces and I get so involved in like the timelines and the furniture, and this isn't going to be on time, we're going to be over budget, and this equipment broke, and I'm sick of fixing this 3D printer. um my makerspace teachers at the high school, that it's called their impact studio, they shared a video with me the other day that they presented at a conference, and I didn't know they were filming it. And there were all these student interviews, and there was this foreign exchange student in it, and she was talking about how like she was so blessed to be in this space because in her country this didn't exist and this opportunity didn't exist. And the librarian sent me an email, and she said, I just don't want you to lose sight of the fact that this is because of you. And like, I almost like started crying. I'm not
Yeah,
gonna lie. Like, I watched this
yeah.
video and I was like, I did lose sight of that. Like, I get done with a space and I walk out of it, and I move on to something else. And then when something breaks, I go back and I
Or
fix it, or I help them with whatever they need. But I'm dealing with 80 other problems over here. And it's so easy to lose sight of that. And when we think about this CT center we're building, I mean, this is 60,000 square feet that's going to change the course of Louisa County Public Schools for the next 50 to 60 years, probably. That's a big deal.
agreed.
And like,
Yeah,
to be a part of that is a huge thing.
yeah.
But
That is
you wake
huge.
up in the morning and you're not thinking about that. You're thinking, I've got 6 CT center planning meetings today, and I've got this and I've got that. And you go home at night and you're stressed, and you think about like, and, but I'm excited for, 15 years from now, when I look back on my career and I look at all the things that we accomplished together and the impacts that it had. And I think that I'm going to be able to retire and know that what I did made a difference. And to me, that matters. Um, and I
Yeah,
think you can find that in every career pathway. If you're an auto mechanic, it's easy to get lost in the fact that you're sitting in the shop all day turning wrenches, but you're also keeping people going to work, going to the grocery stores, their livelihood. Like, you make a difference, and everything that we do makes a difference. And keep that in mind at the end of the day.
yeah. What a healthy perspective. I really hope people are able to listen and kind of internalize that insight, because I agree. We've all play a part. In my other previous lives, I've done everything from flooring to, I've also been in the military. I worked at State Farm, and just recognizing that each role we play definitely adds value to the collective society. And I think that really reflects back to your earlier comment of just that
Yeah.
citizenship aspect of, what we contribute definitely is not just for us, but it's also should be recognized as its contribution to the larger whole. Yeah, that's awesome. And then to your point around the space that you all are building, the CTE center, uh, 50, 60 years, I agree. I heard the term education touches the future, and I've always held on to that just as that special kind of, let me recognize just the value that this really offers and adds, not just for the moment, but going forward as well. So great insight, great input. I think that's just well timed as it relates to just what we all should be really focused on, as just so many different things change on a day-to-day basis in our reality. This has been a great conversation. I could definitely keep going. I want to now just on air invite you back. I think there's a lot more that we can kind of just extrapolate from this conversation. Again, as it relates to the value add for our audience, this is really just about being able to, again, show and build on the relevance of the ways that education should be perceived and executed. So I think you all, you specifically, and then you all with at Louisa County Public Schools have a great grasp on what that looks like. Um, Very excited for you all's future, and love to maybe visit the space when you all are in construction or have it fully built. That'd be
Oh
awesome
yeah.
just to be able to share and experience that as
Feel free to
well.
come out anytime. We can do a podcast right in the impact studio or any of the other places, and
Yeah,
and show you. I think we could show you some pretty cool stuff.
absolutely, absolutely. I'll tell my team and actually make sure we get that down. Um, yeah, Kenny, this has been a great conversation. I'll pause to see if you have anything else for the audience before we close
No,
out.
thanks for having me. I appreciate you giving me a pulpit to, just get a lot of things out there, and excited to see what kind of reactions come from it. And I'm always willing to help. So anybody wants to find me, Louisa County Public Schools, you can find my contact information. We do have a CTE website. I'm on there as well. And I don't have a ton of pictures of like our lab spaces and stuff up there, but I have a pretty good, portfolio book put together, because a lot of people have been asking lately, like, can you show us this? How did you do that? And we really want to, we want to be the best. I think every school division wants to be the best, but we also want to help everyone else too. So, and we want to be helped. So if anybody's got some
Yeah,
better ideas out there, reach out to me. I'll say that is the hard part a little bit about innovating, is getting connected with all the people that are doing the same things you're doing, and kind of
yeah.
leveraging that stuff together. But yes, thanks for having me today. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. And to your latter call out, if for our audience, if you all would love to support, by all means, reach out directly to Kenny over at Louisa County Schools. But feel free to reach out to Community Foundation, at Community Foundation on all social platforms, or directly to our email, info@community.co. If you all have other topics and ideas or guest suggestions that you'd like to make, feel free also to email that directly to us. We'll look forward to hearing from you all. Thank you. This has been a great conversation. I'm excited for everyone to be able to really take and extract value from this conversation. But see you all next week. Thank you.